the idea of working toward a cultural shift. And an article that I read by Will Barrett on Net Results, he's from Indiana University, he talked about money being an incomplete metaphor for class. And we've spent most of this time talking about economics, which makes sense, but there's a sort of a bigger picture here that's important to consider. So he talked about in this article economic, social, and cultural capital, and that's something that Bourdieu wrote about in the 80s, and that's kind of widely used in the literature. But he also talked about Barrett talked about academic capital being part of that picture. And all of these things take time and skill to acquire. And I think a quote that kind of touches on this is that first generation students may come to campus with low prestige cultural capital that is not valued by the prestige class on campus. What Larry Estrada did in our cultural pluralism class is kind of a nice illustration of this, that the knowledge and skills from the Urban IQ test are not necessarily something that is valued on campus. Part of this bigger picture is looking at classism, racism, sexism, and from the Class Action website, I have this quote that I think is really relevant. In order to deal effectively with classism, we need to deal with racism and sexism. And in order to deal effectively with racism or sexism, we need to deal with class. Okay, so we have this ideology of diversity where we value multiple perspectives and differences, experiences, and backgrounds. And we know that it's the right thing to do to have multiple perspectives represented on campus, and we also know that that enriches everyone's education. And then we also have this ideology of acculturation, that you need A, B, and C to succeed in college. And we have studies to back that up. You can see how those two ideologies conflict. Ultimately, what I'm asking is for us to bring a critical eye to acculturation, and to think about it in a paradigm shift kind of way. How can we, as student affairs professionals, work to dismantle acculturation? Is it the right thing to do? And is it possible? And this is clearly a very narrow question. But really what I'm asking here is, how can we as student affairs professionals better serve the student population? How can we shift towards a model that's more about the two being intertwined? Because obviously students do need certain things to succeed in college. This is just kind of your chance to discuss this, even if this doesn't turn into a meaningful conversation now. I mean, hopefully this thought will stay with you, and maybe it was already with you, and it's something that you will take into your careers.